In this video, I'll be talking about how you can model data efficiently using WhereScape 3D inside of a CI/CD workflow. In my experience, I've worked with many data modelers and data engineers who have struggled to build data models that add real value, either because they've had no tools to work with, or they've had the lack of information needed to accurately translate the user requirements into a data model that's going to add value. The kinds of problems that you can expect to bump into will be things like not being able to prototype quickly, unable to design a data model that you can then use in a deadline because the processes and workflows you have are too slow and just prevent you from moving quickly, all the way through to those people who have tools that can help model not being able to utilize all that information to push through into a physical platform and materialize their design into something that can be used by the business user. So I'm going to show you how you can prototype and iterate through a data model design using WhereScape 3D and all the functions, as well as push and commit designs to Git, pull a commit back, pull and cherry pick designs from previous commits. So the best thing we can do is to head over to my computer where I can demonstrate how to use WhereScape 3D, as well as working with our Git repository GitHub to review our user cases and user stories, and also to interact and commit back to that repository. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install the enablement pack. And this comes in a simple MSI, and this needs to be installed after I've installed WhereScape Red and WhereScape 3D. There we go. That will then deploy a desktop shortcut that I can use to interact with the repository. So the first thing I'm going to do is double click on the desktop shortcut, and this will open up the settings that I need to fill in to create a link from my machine to the Git repository. So to begin with, I'm going to create a repository just for WhereScape 3D. I have an option for a developer machine or a deployment machine, which we'll cover in a different video. I'm going to ensure that my database name has got the letter D inside of it to denote a development environment. And I have an option to either drop the schema or drop database when I do a pull. And that's just what happens within the WhereScape metadata to clear out any previous settings. Now on this video, I'm going to connect to GitHub, and then I'm going to copy in or paste in the name of the organization. I'm going to include my email, and then I'm going to copy in the name of my repository. So this has already been created within GitHub, so I don't have to do anything from here. The final thing I'm going to add is my personal access token. So I've added in my personal access token. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check that I do actually have a folder on my machine called users Simon Meacher Git. If that Git folder doesn't exist, the process will create it for you, and it will also create the CI/CD enablement pack, or the name of the repository that you're connecting to align your Git repository, remote Git repository, to your local Git repository. Now, because it's the first time we've set up anything on this repository, my Git repository is currently blank. You can see this is the repository, and there's no code in it whatsoever. So what I need to do within Git is to create the first file. So create a README file. So now I've got a repository with no branches, just main. I've selected the initial build is yes, and this selection will ensure that the minimum metadata needed to set up WhereScape 3D is deployed into the branch, the development branch of our new repository, and ensure that all the interactions with CI/CD work. I'm now going to hop down to my WhereScape 3D settings, where I will add in the location of the Postgres, the port for the Postgres server. You can see the name of the database that's going to be created, the username for that database, and that can be specified or built separately and added in. We're just going to go ahead and click on OK. So at this point, the process is configuring the Git repository for us, and you'll now see that it has built some automatic branches. So we have main, we have quality, and we have development. We're going to select the development branch as our starting point, and we're going to use the process of merging development into quality and quality into main, and we're going to continue that flow, branch merging all the way throughout these videos. So as you can see now, the metadata is being created and the WhereScape 3D instance is being established so we can continue the development. At this point, I can commit back to the Git repository and state initial build completed, ready for development. So now WhereScape has, the initial build has completed and WhereScape 3D has opened up and is ready for us to start the design. So now I'm going to open up GitHub and I'm going to go to my repository where I have all my use cases configured inside of issues. So I can see all of my use cases refer to this thing called sales. So I need to import data from my sales system in order to be able to do total sales and total number of sales. So if I jump back to WhereScape, I can now create a new connection to connect to my sales. I'm going to call the connection sales, and on this occasion I'm going to connect to the ODBC, and I'm going to test my connection, successful, and then I'm going to let the WhereScape 3D automation build out a source model which is going to help me to understand the data and the structure within the sales database. So if you can see, I can pick from many different data types. I don't have to just be a database, it could be a file or a script. I can pick the connection and then I can select the schema I want to discover, and I'm going to keep it around DBO because I don't want information schema and I don't want sys schema. I'm going to do a quick discovery and I'm going to hit discover. At this point, if I wish, I can do a discovery around the profiling. We're going to come back to that later. So now if I right mouse button and display, I can now see the current design of all the tables in my sales system, and at this point it has no derived relationships. I could have selected that on my ingestion, but I chose not to show you another function that you have within 3D. This is the first step of discovering a source connection. So being a good developer, I'm going to commit those changes back to Git. By using the workflow, commit to Git. I get the ability to create a commit message, ingested data from the sales system, contributing towards, and now if I'm really clever I can go back and figure out I've got hashtag 1, 2, 3 all the way to 9, so I can do all of these hashtags will tag this commit message to each of the issues in my to-do list. That's now committed the design back to Git, and if I jump back and go into the repository, I can jump to the development branch and you can already see it there. We have got the details, and if you hover over it, it can tell you everything. And from here I can hop to the issue, and the issue then says this is connected to the commit. So I've now connected the first commit for that design has been connected to this issue, and I can hop between the commit and I can hop between the issue as I see fit. But this is a way of making sure from a traceability and accountability point of view, Simon has contributed to the design of the source system, which is going to help us build out and work towards the issues that we have in our use cases. So going back to 3D now, I can carry on to use the functionality, and I may wish to derive the relationships within this particular source model. Now this source model, I could have done this all up front, but want to explain how this works. So from here we can do one of two things. We can automatically detect any relationships that may exist within the database, or if I wish to, as I'm about to show you, I can create a set of rules that are used to map the names of the fields between tables. I have the ability to include all tables or exclude tables. I can do the same for excluding any particular tables. I then have the ability to incorporate the type of filter I'm going to do. So I'm going to look for anything that has ID inside of it. I can then limit down the character type or the data type. So I can remove date times, I can remove varchars and numeric values. So if I expand out any of these, it tells me the exact format. No, that's never going to be used. Click on next. We can say how much of the columns need to be identical by name, so at least 50%. And you can tweak with these to make it a very, very efficient way of doing it. For now, because I know this is going to work, I'm going to move to profiling. If I click on derive now, it will come back and give us present a list of its findings and how it's going to work. It will then tell you where the foreign key is, what the foreign key column is, the primary key table and the primary key column. And from here I can amend, change, clear out, define manually all of these, as well as using the suggested values here. It's come up with 90 foreign keys, so I'm going to accept all of them, and then it will apply that to the model, which is really good. If I wish, I can redesign this. So let's go for a horizontal design, and from here I can zoom out, and we're getting close to an entity relationship diagram with all the relationships connecting all of the tables, various one-to-many relationship. But we've updated our understanding of the source system, and we can refine that until we understand everything and all the nuances that we might have. And this is extremely important as it starts to inform the data model that we build in the future, as anything in the source system, any relationships, any data structure, data types that we define in here will then be used in our design further on, and then be used to help construct the physicalized model that we produce at the end of this. We've now done another change to our source model. I'm going to hit commit to Git, and I'm just going to update the Git repository with my new model. So we're going to go back to Git and see what kind of user stories we have in here, and we've got two types. We've got the type looking at the sales value, and we've got the type looking at the number. Dimensionally, we've got salesperson, we've got customer, product, transaction, and order date. So we've got a few things that we can work through here. So now we're going to start working through these use cases one at a time to figure out and build out our facts and our dimensions. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the total sales per order date, as it was the first one. And you can see, as a managing director, I want to understand the total sales per order date so that I can identify daily sales trends and peak performance periods. So we've got an idea that there's a managing director who will look at this, but the fact table really wants to concentrate on total sales and the order date. Going back to my model, I can see that there is probably some form of order, and I have the order header, order line values. So what I can start to do is create a group. So we call this the sales fact, and in here I might want to incorporate the order header, so I add that to an existing group, and I want to add in my order line, and it brings in, so this is just a subset of the main relationship. So in here it helps me to cut down and refine my model so I can concentrate on the problem in hand. In here I can see I've got order number, I've got transaction currency. I'm really looking for order date, so order date will be on the header. Brilliant. And I can see down here I've got things like product on the order line, I've got quantity and sales amount. So the sales amount is another value that I want to incorporate into the next thing. But from here I know that we probably need to incorporate a few more fields, a few more entities from the overall design. If I go back a stage and go into product, well, this user case is pretty much identical, but it wants to look at the product. So I can now incorporate product into my existing design. Straight away I can see an existing relationship against the product and the product line. Back again, customer, again it's just looking for the customer. So if I just hunt through these, it's going to be customer, it's going to be salesperson. Okay, fantastic. Let's go through and have a look at that. So do I have customer? Brilliant, I do. Let's add that into the existing group, and I can see that comes off the order header. Brilliant. And salesperson, so let's bring in employee as well. Cool. Now with employee, we have a slight crossover. There's a lot of different connections between employee and order header, employee and customer, employee in and the product, and that's just a many to one in a lot of cases. So that means that an employee could exist against many headers, against many order lines and many products. The relationship I'd want to worry about here is what is the difference between the employee on the header and the employee on the line. What I want to do now, I've established that I've got all of the data I need. I've found pretty much the fact data that's needed in the order line. I can see that it links out to employee, where I have information about the first name, last name. I've got some HR looking data in there. I've got current position, which is good, and then I've got customer code, shipping address. I've got all the information I probably need there. I can move on and start to build out a star scheme. So now you've watched me build out a data model using WhereScape 3D and pushing all of that design into Git. This workflow process enables an individual or a small team or many small teams to scale up the data development within your organization. From here, you can quickly and reliably scale out your development, whether you want to scale out your team or scale out the amount of output that one team creates. You can utilize Git to version control and create traceability between which developer has changed which model at which time. Also, from this point, you can push out and design test automation around everything to utilize automated testing to check your design as you go through the process of development. So with this kind of workflow for your data modelers or your data designers, you can see how you can avoid manual errors and inconsistency between each environment, as well as creating capabilities for the same rules and checks to be applied across the entire team, not just one individual.